Well, welcome to Chapter 1, What's OM Really All About? It's a topic that often confuses people. They either don't know what to expect or they make some bad assumptions about what we're going to cover. So I like this working definition of operations management. It's not exactly, I don't believe, what's in the chapter. I would say, when people ask me what is operations management, it is the management, which I hate using the word to define it, but hey, it's the management of systems or processes that create goods and or services. Now that's some pretty important language actually, because when I say systems, I don't mean computer systems. I mean ways of getting things done. So a system can be a method, a process, a procedure. It's not necessarily technology, but of course we use technology to enable our processes. So technology's in there, but it's not a requirement. And remember that we're creating goods and or services. That's where operations comes into play, because we want to do that very well. We want to be profitable. We want happy customers. We want a growing market share. So it comes across all types of organizations, and that would include government as well as nonprofits. And a lot of what we do in operations management to actually make all that happen are these types of things. And as you look at these, some of these terms may sound a little extreme to you or not, might not make sense, but we'll unwrap these throughout the semester. And I think you're going to find no matter what job you go into and no matter what organization you go into, you're going to be doing these types of things. In fact, you're probably already doing them in your life, maybe in your current job, maybe in your internship. So operations management is really at the core of what most of us do. And of course, a reminder, it applies to all services and manufacturing. I like to use this continuum. It's mentioned briefly in the chapter, but the reason I want you to get your head around it is when we talk about an organization, people will very quickly go, oh, well, I'm in a services business, so inventory doesn't matter to me, supply chain doesn't matter to me, it doesn't pertain to me, why am I hearing about this? But I would argue that very few, if any, businesses are pure goods or pure services. So I like to look at an organization, and so on this double-ended arrow, I would say this is your organization. This is who you work for or who you hope to be working for, whether this is Stanley Black & Decker or Under Armour or T. Rowe Price or PNC Bank or whoever that was. And I would question then where they fit on this continuum. Do they produce goods or do they produce services? And I provide the argument that most organizations are somewhere in between. So we might look at Under Armour and say, well, Under Armour is clearly a goods producer. They make clothing. But really that's not quite accurate, because a lot of what they do and a lot of the reason we buy from Under Armour is because of the services they provide. So while we do get a good from them, but the services are really an important part. And so to help understand how this all fits, I break this down a little bit. And I'd say one way you define this would be the degree of customer contact. And so if you look at something like a barber shop, where someone would say, well, that's clearly a service, that is high customer contact. And so services are often defined by high contact. So as you're looking at your own organization, and we're going to do this in a future part of the course, I would say you'd say, well, where does mine fall? Maybe Hair Cuttery falls here. Maybe McDonald's falls kind of here, because it's still a lot of customer contact, but I'm really getting food. So where would you draw the line to represent your organization? Uniformity of input means the things that you use in order to produce your goods or service, how much are they the same? So let's think about when we make a box of granola, if we're the General Mills company. Pretty much all of our oats look the same, all of our raisins look the same, all of our sugar looks the same, all of our cinnamon looks the same. So we're probably around in here. While we've got several inputs and boxes and glue and labels and all these things that go into it, it all comes in pretty much looking the same, which makes us very close to being a goods-oriented company. Let's go back to Hair Cuttery. It's primarily a service. How uniform are the people that walk in the door? How much is their hair the same? The color, the texture, the length, the desire of what they want their hair to look like. It's extremely not uniform, which pushes us more towards a services perspective. Let's go through the rest of these. Uniformity of output. How much do things look the same when we are finished with them? Our granola boxes pretty much look the same, but our hair cuttery, very, very much towards the opposite end. So don't be totally fooled. I should have put a reverse scale in here, but recognize where we fit on this continuum for how things come out. And I'll explain why that's important in just a minute. Let me just throw the last of these out. Labor content. Often low on goods because we have machines that do the work for us. On services, we need people to do that. So high labor content, hair cuttery, tax offices, taxi drivers, Uber drivers, high labor content. Measurement of productivity is a tough one. Watch for this one when you go through the chapter. How do you, at the end of the day, and you had 4 people standing in front of you and they say, well, I'm a hair cuttery technician. And you say, well, how productive were you? And the one says, well, I'm really productive because I did 18 customers today. And another one says, well, I only did 2. Well, hold it. Is that an indication of how productive they are? Because the person that did 2, maybe they did hair coloring and hair cutting and a perm job on that one customer. And they might have brought in $100 of revenue, and another person, while they did 18 people, they made $18 per person. So productivity can be elusive in services. Now, chapter 2, we're really going to get into productivity, so don't sweat that too much. With goods, productivity is more easily measured. We can say, how many boxes of cereals did we produce? How many containers did we move? Those type of things. Similarly, difficulty of quality assurance. With goods, it's pretty easy. How difficult is it? It's not difficult at all. We can measure. We can weigh the boxes. We could put all the boxes under a microscope and look for any non-conforming product in there. Services, quality of assurance is really, really hard. Somebody, you might think you just gave a person the perfect haircut, and they turn around and they look in the mirror and they go, oh my God, what did you do to my head? So quality assurance is very difficult in services because it differs by each person's opinion. So the reason I lay these out is because I want you to be able to look at your organization, where you're working, where you want to be working, where you've worked in the past, something. You should be able to rate each of these because this is an indicator of how difficult it is to manage the operation. If we have high labor content, for example, we're going to have training issues. We're going to have to provide higher pay because these are skilled people. When we have uniformity of output, it's going to be easy to measure. It's going to be easy to count, to control. Measuring productivity, we're going to be able to motivate our employees because it's easy to tell who's doing their work and who isn't. Quality assurance, is it going to be easy or hard? These are all issues of operations management. And having a framework, and I think you just put slashes on these bars, would be a great way to do that. So watch for that when you get in. What's it all about? A term that I really want you to get comfortable with is what I call value add. Technically, value add is a mathematical calculation. It's the difference between the cost of the inputs and the value or price of the outputs. So if I make granola, it's the cost of all the nuts and granola and oats and sugar and cinnamon and everything that went into it, and the box and the label and the machine time and the labor time and the lighting and all that, versus what I can sell it to my customer for. So we can do some math on value add, but in reality, what it comes down to is if you as an organization, you as a person are not adding value that your customer recognizes and wants, you are out of business. So think about that in maybe in even courses that you've taken where you've done a whole semester's worth of work and you come out of it and you could say, what is the value? What did I learn in there that's really going to help me? Now certainly I checked off a course that I have to graduate, so there's some value there. But hopefully there's value beyond that. There's value in something that you've learned or perspective or people you've met that are really going to pay off in the future. So we really need to be about value add, and value add is a perspective of what your customer recognizes as valuable to them. So tuck that away in the back of your mind. Modes of business, outsourcing, insourcing, nearshoring, and reshoring. These are in the news every day today. But let me give you just some brief definitions so you can work with. And these are not perfect definitions, but outsourcing is when we as an organization decide that it's better to have someone else do it for us than do it ourselves. So if you look out the window here, you would see a lawn crew cutting the grass at Towson University, and it would be an outside service provider. Now, 20 years ago, you'd look out that window, you would see Towson employees driving Towson lawnmowers, using Towson equipment and Towson trucks. And we have found that there are other people out there that could actually do a very good job for us. And because of economies of scale, that's another term you should be comfortable with, or labor advantages, or specialization, or equipment specialization, or licensing, that there are people outside of our organization that could actually do it at a better cost and potentially at a better quality than we can do ourselves. Insourcing we're seeing a lot of right now, where companies are changing and transferring back and saying, hold it, there's some things we really should do ourselves. We're putting ourselves at risk by trusting other people to do our work for us. It could impact our profitability, our customers, our market share. Another term you should know, intellectual property, our IP, the special knowledge we have that gives us a competitive advantage in the marketplace. If we just outsource everything, then everyone else knows our business. Nearshoring is a strategy recently where we're bringing production particularly, and some services like call centers, closer to our home country. So instead of having these things done in Asia, we might have them done in Canada or in the Caribbean or in Central America. So nearshoring is bringing things closer with the hopes of decreasing some of our logistics costs, the transportation costs primarily. Reshoring is when we actually change strategies, and instead of having things particularly in Asia or far removed from us, we actually bring them back into our home country. So reshoring home country is that key term. And there's always trade-offs involved. There's pros and cons, goods and bads. You win here, you lose there. So we need to, as operations managers, constantly be thinking goods and bads. It's not always all good and it's not all bad. It's a balance between the two, and if the good outweighs the bad, it's a good thing and we go for it. Another item I want you to get your head around, systems approach. As an operations manager, you step up higher. You're looking down on the organization, and you realize that it's not all about a single function of the organization. It's how all the functions work together. So we might realize the marketing people might come in and go, oh my goodness, we have this incredible opportunity. We have this great marketing plan. We're going to go out on social media with new videos and a new product and all this stuff. It's going to be amazing, and it launches next month. As an operations manager or person with an operations mindset, you would look at that and immediately go, okay, that's a great idea. Who's it going to impact? How are we going to warehouse this stuff? Are our salespeople ready? Do our customers have the information they need? How will we handle returns? How will we handle questions? So we as operations people, we know the right questions to ask to make sure that that new marketing campaign is completely successful. So we recognize that our organization is a system of internal and external entities that work together, and that you can't affect one of them without having impacts on all of them. Really important concept. That ties in also with, I'll throw this in, process versus silo mentality. Silo mentality is that we're so focused on our individual function, marketing, accounting, finance, purchasing, whatever that might be, that we fail to recognize that other areas are impacted and will influence whether our customers achieve what we are hoping. Do they get what they want? Are they willing to buy more? All of that. And so if we, instead of focusing on our silos, we look at the process of how do we introduce customers to our products? How do we get those products into their hand or services? How do we collect the money from that? How do we ensure that they receive the service they need? And how do we get them to come back to us and buy again? That's a process. And organizations are starting to change their focus to processes rather than focusing solely on the functional areas where we find that tensions occur and really failures occur. So those are a lot of concepts. I know I went through them kind of quick, but I wanted you to hear them from my perspective, having worked in that area for almost 17 years, and seen a lot of things happen. I'll share some more specifics with you as we move through the course, but for now, let's dive in and get going on the week.